Hi, Paul Farmer. Welcome to 10 by 6.
Hello.
We've introduced and asked Paul onto the program this week, and he's coming on again next week. So we're going to be talking about two separate things. This week we're going to talk about the G7, not specifically the environmental targets and things like that, but just the way in which his area of Cornwall is being affected by the build-up to G7 conference, which takes place this weekend. And our focus will be primarily upon the police, but also we're touching upon housing and the media in the local area. And then, as I say, next week we're going to talk to you again, Paul, about your book, which has been fantastic. So how are you? Okay?
Yeah, very well. Very well. Yeah. Good. Work's easing off.
Well, this discussion is alongside an article that Paul has written for Dorset Eye, which we published earlier in the week. And this article is entitled, as you can see, "The Paramilitary Have Arrived in Cornwall." So it goes straight to the core of the matter. And it's an excellent article, only a short article, so it doesn't take long to read, but it's an excellent article going right to the heart of Paul and the local people's experiences that are taking place in and around him and have been since when, Paul? Since last week as this build-up began?
It's been, yes, over the last, they've been talking about it for a while, but the actual build-up has been going on, particularly over the last few days. And now we're circled by helicopters almost continuously.
So tell us about the article is just, as I say, it's a great little article. So tell us about, how you've come into contact with the police and your sort of experiences thus far.
It's the kind of the main way this has been introduced to us is through the kind of local media who have been reporting on the police's preparations for G7, and we actually got given through our door. Now this is, I'm in Penryn at the moment, which is nearly 30 miles from Carbis Bay, but we get a book because Falmouth has been shut off for reasons we'll talk about. The centre of Falmouth has been shut off for reasons we'll talk about. So the police saying to us, "We are proud that Cornwall has been chosen to host the G7 summit," which is kind of appropriate because from the way it looks like the police are actually hosting the G7 summit and not Cornwall at all. We have the media telling us about rings of steel, which have been erected around, erected being most appropriate because this is a very macho picture we're getting here of the policing. But they've erected a ring of steel around Carbis Bay, the Carbis Bay Hotel, and large parts of St Ives where the people are staying. And overall, the entire emphasis is on this security, and so the media is full of pictures of police with heavily armed police, as we've got a graphic here, which shows that, and the entire tenet of the entire kind of emphasis is about security. It's very much emphasised this is nothing not to do with us, although there is a place for us. There's a kind of place for us, which is they've set up these approved demonstration sites. We've got one in Falmouth, one in Truro, and then the next one's in Plymouth, and we've got even in Exeter, which is 100 miles from Carbis Bay, where we can go and approvedly register our displeasure, to whom I'm not entirely sure, because you'd have to shout very loud to be heard in Carbis Bay. And there's a kind of ritual being enacted here, which we're supposed to participate on in that way, which is kind of confusing because I do really want to kind of express how I feel about these world leaders coming here, but at the same time I don't want to be part of their circus, and they're expecting me to go and perform my disapproval in a way which kind of feeds into the vision, the spectacle, in situationist terms of these world leaders and how they see their world.
And it's interesting, linking into that the local hospital has cleared 2 wards in preparation for anything happening, in preparation for any violence in terms of the police or in terms of demonstrators, in terms of the media, in terms of the dignitaries, the oligarchical elitist politicians that could come in there. And they're kicking out the locals. I mean, there was a phone in on the local radio station from a lady who suggested that it was the hospital trust had basically told them that they needed to find a care home, certainly in the short term, for their 97-year-old mother. it's almost as if the local people, appears to me, are inconvenient at this point. And it's also that the demonstrators, because they kept being kept so far, it's just a representation really of what they call democracy, but perhaps we call something else.
Oh yeah, I think that's absolutely right. There's a really apposite image being presented here, which is that of these world leaders who are basically politicians who've elevated themselves in this context into the state, into the realm of statesmanship, but they aren't. They're people like Boris Johnson and so on, and they've created this artificial bubble, this heavily armed bubble in the middle of Cornwall, in the height of the preparations for the holiday season. The kind of major emphasis here is, what the hell are they doing? This is insane. You don't come here at that time unless you have to, and you don't come and disrupt things like this. And so what there is, I mean, we've seen pictures of Biarritz and the various other G7s and G8s before, the big ones in 2005 and so on, and how do you kind of register the fact that actually this is really annoying? Don't expect us to perform for you. We're just coming out of lockdown and so on. But we would like you to just not bother us like this. I've got a kind of real problem with this approach. And I think the other problem is that the media share it. They've got their own ringers deal in Falmouth, the media, and they're being centred in Falmouth, which is even further from Carbis Bay than I am here. So remember that when you see the coverage, everyone, because that's where they're covering it from. And they've got a huge, great edifice they built, temporary edifice, shut down all the car parks in the centre of the town in the height of holiday visitations. And this isn't good. But so also the press are in this bubble, the media are in this bubble too, and they're shut off from the world. And I cannot see the point of this apart from the fact that it shoves our face in the fact that these powerful people are so much so much superior to us. Because if they can't come here and meet the local people and talk to the local businesses and find out what the real issues are, we've got some of the poorest communities in Northern Europe, and they'll see none of that. They'll bypass Cornwall and Redruth. They won't go anywhere near Snostal, these places, or the outskirts of Penzance. These kind of huge, these large kind of social housing estates, which are really, really having it hard. All bypassed. They might as well be in Kathmandu. They might as well be in Timbuktu. If they can't come here and meet us, what is the point of them coming here? If the security situation which they evoke is so appalling, they really do need to go to an aircraft carrier or some kind of equivalent. Not pretend to come and visit us and then lock us out like this. It goes long beyond mild annoyance to the fact that this is actually the world we're living in. It's far too immediate an image of all the horrors and all that's wrong with our political systems and all the things which causes the cynicism, which leads to so many other bad effects.
So what you're almost saying is that the corporate media are going to come down to a particular place in Cornwall for a particular amount of time, and they're going to then publish from a pre-prepared script things that you're arguing we could have had if they'd met on an oil rig or a tanker or an aircraft carrier, that in actual fact, the benefits of coming to Cornwall are entirely for the attendees. And certainly your article suggests, that they come at the height of Flaming June, when they could have organised something like this out of season and brought more resources and income to the local area. But actually, they've done it at a point where they're turfing people out. So in terms of the economic gains for the area, it's not going to be that significant. But it's really about creating an image, a perspective, ideologically, in our minds, and that the corporate media are playing along with that illusion. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, and I think that's where we are. I think that's entirely where we are. And I think what's been happening, we've seen happening in the UK over the past few years, is we've had someone in control of one of the major parties who threatened that view, who was someone who would insist ongoing and talking to me. I'm talking about Jeremy Corbyn and the kind of Labour Party, which is sort of recently kind of ceased to be in that respect. But this was kind of a big threat, and that was, you know, this was a threat. This explains a lot. This is business as usual, but business as usual to what end? I can't really see. I mean, it is quite horrific. You've mentioned the, you know, the hospital there, but also one of our Labour councillors, Jane Kirkham, has been noting that that part of the homeless provision in Cornwall, which tends to be somewhat ad hoc sometimes, has actually been pushing people out of, yeah, I mean, it's been pushing people out of hotel accommodation where they've been placed because they are homeless in favour of the kind of wider peripheral visitation by the media and whatever. So making more hotel beds available for more people from the BBC and from CNN and so on, because without that attention, as we're so shut out, this thing is completely meaningless.
And that brings us probably to the, you know, the end of this point here, is in terms of completely meaningless. Do you think that also carries over into the targets that will eventually be set at this G7 conference this weekend in terms of the well-being of planet Earth?
I do, and we're almost encouraged to expect that. You know, we're encouraged to expect lip service, and you know, and the kind of justification for having these face-to-face meetings in a time of COVID-19 is that they can discuss things in private. I don't like the sound of that, but on the plus side, perhaps someone will get Boris Johnson in a room and give him a good batting around the head until he stops, for example, in interfering with the abilities of third world and developing countries to manufacture COVID vaccines for themselves without paying some kind of premium. You know, what we're seeing here is, as usual, a great dissonance between what it is they claim they want to do and what it is they actually will do. And these events tend to be lip service personified. There's also the kind of almost kind of world constitutional issues about, hang on, why are these people unilaterally taking these responsibilities, which presumably should be invested in, for example, in the United Nations, which is a properly constituted body. This is sort of ad hoc and chucks Russia out every now and then, and then maybe lets them back in after a while. Doesn't have China in it, because China doesn't qualify because the average wage is very low, despite the fact it's the major player in the capitalist world now. The average wage is very low, but they want to talk to Modi from India, this kind of part of the bonkersocracy which has come to rule large parts of the world. You know, what is the point of talking to Modi and not talking to China? Yeah, none of it makes sense. It is about them being seen to take things very, very seriously and to be very, very statesperson-like.
Fantastic. Well, as you know, we keep it to 10 minutes. I think you've covered all of the vital issues there in terms of how significant the conference will be and how disruptive it's been to local people. So thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much for coming on 10 by 6.
A pleasure.